In the previous two shows, I introduced two historians, Alan Wilson and Baram Blackett, who have been researching ancient British history since 1976. They have published 9 books, and their discoveries include the genealogy of 2 King Arthurs, a dynasty of 80 British kings. They also claim to have located the resting place of the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Cross, and other buried treasures. In the previous two shows, I outlined what seemed to be a serious attempt on the life of Baram Blackett, and also media smear campaigns and obfuscation attempting to discredit their work. The skullduggery does not end there. In this programme, I will be looking further at alleged corruption within Welsh authorities, starting with the Welsh Arts Council, who ran a book centre. One of the roles of the Welsh Arts Council was to read and assess manuscripts written by researchers who are seeking help in getting their work promoted. In order to get your manuscript read by the Welsh Arts Council, the submitter must pay a reading fee. Once the council have read the manuscript, they then give a decision on whether they wish to promote the author's work or not, and then keep the fee regardless of the decision.
They would, what you did, you produced your manuscript, you submitted it to them, you paid a fee. Mm-hmm. They took the manuscript, they put it out to 2 readers, and they got reports back, and based on that they would make a decision whether you have a grant or not. Mm-hmm. And they would report annually, book of this title, this author, is going to be published by this publisher, and the grant is so much. That's what happened.
Fair enough.
It sounds fair, yeah. So we went along and tried to talk to them, and I was told, oh no, we don't publish books on history. No, that's, of course they do, right? Yeah. They're trying to get rid of us. So I began sussing this guy out. You know, I was a bit suspicious, you see. So I said, can I see your annual reports? We don't keep them in the office, you know. Mm-hmm. So I went to the Welsh office itself in Cathays Park, and the Welsh office, or Minister of State for Wales, and I said, they got a big library there. Could I see the library, and I want to see the Arts Council statements? Or you can't go in the library. Well, of course you can. It's open to the bloody public.
So you were trying to find out who had been given money by them in the past?
A little more than that.
Right.
But anyway, we then wrote to the minister, and he said, of course you can go in the library. So we took this letter on. This woman had to let us in, and was she mad? Didn't want us in there, you see. Right. I said, we just want to see the Arts Council reports for the 14 years they've been running, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have any. Well, it's a blatant lie, you see. Mm-hmm. Oh, off we go to the Cardiff Central Library, the city centre library, yeah? It was a fine library in those days, one of the best in Britain. It got any copies of the Arts Council reports, annual reports? You know, yeah. Well, we can only find 12 of the 14. I said, well, that's all right. Well, you got a list of the committee and a list of the recipients of books. That looks fine. But if you stick all of them together, which we did, you know, a big long table, the recipients start moving over to the committee, and the committee start moving over to be recipients. They're playing musical chairs. And it's blatant, right?
The revolving door syndrome.
Yeah. So, and they're all university types, so they consider it to be a university. Hang on, this is the best bit. But we also noticed there were 7 books that had been published, maybe 8, but certainly 7, which had no author. No author at all. Now, no person employed by the Arts Council is entitled to apply for an Arts Council grant. They obviously have corruption. Well, it turns out these books without an author were being edited by the guy who ran the book section of the Arts Council, Mike Stevens. He was giving himself grants. Right. Then he had another bright idea. They ran a little bookshop, and they had a young guy. He'd left school at 16, he was about 22 years old, and he was the shop assistant. So Mike Stevens set up the Welsh Academy. He rented a little office down in the Exchange building in the docks. Put a secretary in there, right, little girl, typewriter, and he made his shop assistant director of the Welsh Academy. He then gave him 50,000 quid for the Welsh Academy to publish an anthology. And the director of the Welsh Academy, the young shop assistant, gave the money to Mike Stevens to write the anthology. He'd given himself 50,000.
Yeah, and then his authorless book, so it can't be traced to him.
Well, he helped himself to 50,000 quid. He didn't have it off the Arts Council, he had it off his pet academy.
And was that ever exposed? Did he?
Yeah. we submitted a book through a religious organisation in Birmingham. We said, submit this book for us.
Yeah, I was going to tell you about this because this is quite interesting,
So
because
Baram,
as you mentioned,
yeah,
that you actually have to pay them a fee
for having the book
for
read.
them to read
the
the
book.
book, and if they like it, they will then publish it and put money behind it.
If they won't, they keep your fee.
Yeah, they keep the fee for reading the book, right? But they have to read the book.
Right.
So,
So no, we get this lot always on their knees in Birmingham, religious people, nice, beautiful people.
Yeah.
And we said, submit this book for us. But Baram stuck together with little bits of glue. He stuck together 80 pages. Little doot glue. So
little dots of super glue.
You'd have to break it. You
Pages,
can't open the page. And 80 pages couldn't be read, you see. So they sent it off for us, and it came back absolutely scathing. Red hot. You can burn your fingers, like terrible book.
So the same
But all the pages were still glued together.
Right. So they hadn't read it.
They hadn't read it. So we then took them to court,
right,
because they'd accepted a fee and cashed the money without performing the service, and that's a criminal offence.
Yeah.
So now the Welsh Arts Council's in court.
The Welsh Arts Council, and there's a very good cartoon which says,
well, on the Western Mail,
the guy with the
at front page of the Western Mail, little article about it, and there's a guy and a lady in an evening dress with a cocktail in a hand glass, and there's a man in his evening suit and all that, but he's got a white stick and black glasses. You see, he's obviously blind, and he's saying, actually, I'm a reader for the Welsh Arts Council. Everybody was laughing,
Right.
Of course, it didn't do him any good.
Yeah.
So,
but it still didn't get you any funding, though.
Oh no, but
But you've exposed, a little bit of the corruption in that.
Put it this way, we would like to see the place cleaned up. You don't have to give us the money, because we have always managed somehow anyway. But we'd like to see the place cleaned up, and it's never been.
Yeah. Now, in the early 1990s, in the late 80s, 90s, you had cataracts. So
I developed cataracts, and gradually I couldn't see hardly a thing. We'd had a guy back and forth that we'd met because we're planning to leave Cardiff, and so we've been looking along the south coast, Bournemouth, Brighton, Hove, along there, And we'd met a guy on there who was helpful to us. Whether he seemed to attach himself to us, and he used to send us info. He'd come up to Cardiff.
This is Ridgeway.
He'd come up to Cardiff, and he'd had an accident on the way in his car. And so he was in Cardiff during that Christmas period.
So he'd been staying at your property?
Well, his car was in a hell of a state. He was trying to get it repaired, and he was stuck. He was on his way to Dublin, actually. And he was in a hell of a way, so we said he can stay here. We were a bit like that. Didn't worry us.
He'd been living in the same property, and was he helping you with your research, this guy?
Well, he rented a room.
What's this chap's name?
Leonard Francis Green. But he's got several different names, aliases.
Yeah.
In 1991, there was a report in the press about some stolen paintings.
My colleague said to me, look, he said, let's get out of this. And we came up to Newcastle for the Christmas, the family there. And she said, get on the train, you'll be all right, get out the other end. You don't have to see where you're going then with you, And so we spent Christmas up here, got back in the New Year, And apparently there were 3 ancient paintings stolen from a church in Glamorgan, out in the sticks, country lanes and all that. Cut a long story short, they arrested me and claimed that I was the thief, and they had an eyewitness to me doing it.
Alan let a room to a certain individual. The individual did a robbery, put the paintings into his bedroom, put them under his bed.
Right.
Now, the police story was that I must have stolen a car. Now, I promise you, I couldn't see the front of a car from the driving seat in broad daylight.
Right.
I mean, I took the dog out for a walk one evening and walked into a tree. So and that had to stop. And it was ridiculous. I was virtually blind, It was purblind, they used to call it with cataract. And so I'd stolen this car and driven about 30 miles, 20 miles of it down winding country lanes in pitch black. Yeah. And they had an eyewitness to me doing the stealing of the paintings, you see.
Right.
Now, that takes a bit of bloody doing.
Yeah.
The paintings, he found he couldn't sell them, so he tried to frame Alan up.
Right.
Because he could get a reward, you see. There's a reward out. the paintings were actually only worth about £6,000.
So you put them under. He was living in your house at the time in Cardiff.
He brought them in his particular rented room,
And
then
Alan's right.
and he tried to frame Alan up for the theft.
It turned out, it's got a long story short, he bloody stole them. He was now the eyewitness to me stealing them.
Right, but he'd stolen them himself and put them
Yeah.
under his bed.
Yeah.
Or the bed in your house.
That's right, he'd put them under the bed. Well, the upshot was there was a lot of bad publicity for us. I'm accused of this heinous crime.
So he thought that he could frame Alan Wilson up, get the reward for the paintings, and probably get a fee from some other source to discredit Alan Wilson and get Alan Wilson as basically criminal record, which he had.
So this was in the press again.
Yeah, well,
So like King
got
Arthur and the
blasted.
searchers.
Oh yeah,
stole.
got me back. Yeah, yeah. Well, it turned out at the end of the day, we played James Bond with him. We had people going around with tape recorders,
Right.
and talking to him in the bar, and he loved to have a meal in the bar, things like that, and having a meal with him, and tape recording him. See,
Right.
so we had 5 tape recorders of him admitting it in detail that
Right,
he
that
did the
he'd
crime.
stolen these paintings.
We had 18 witnesses who he'd spoken to and said he'd done it. He was Motormouth once he'd had a drink.
Right.
And there were 5 people that had seen him with paintings. And what transpired on the opening day of this trial, which
So it actually went to trial in court.
yeah.
So I mean, if you've been found guilty, you'd be in prison, Alan, possibly.
oh, aye, of course I would.
So
So it turns out now that when the trial starts, we managed finally to get the fingerprint evidence. There were fingerprints on the paintings, and they were only one person's, Mr. Ridgway, not mine, right? So they were trying to bluff us. They would, as usual, stand plead guilty and you get a small sentence, all that sort of crap.
Right.
So it became a hideous farce, which was again, it just became so ridiculous. It was thrown out, and
Well, anyhow, our barrister then took that evening after the first day, took all the info we had and said, "No, look, this is what you're up against." And the prosecutor said, "Whoops, you know, let's
Because you had these tapes.
and the fingerprint, and we knew everything."
And also
Plus
in
the
this
fact
case,
he had a cheque for 3,500 quid from a London art dealer
right,
in advance for the bloody things.
right, in advance. So,
They set me up.
Now, following on from that, there was a false claim of assault against you. Is that right? Is that linked to this case?
it's linked to this. It's linked directly to this because one of the 7 people who was prepared to come to court and testify against Leonard Francis Green was Raymond Thomas. Now, so what happened was Leonard Francis Green basically stalked Raymond Thomas. Raymond Thomas, the very day before we was go to the court, the Crown Court, Cardiff Crown Court, and he literally put him in hospital.
Ray Thomas somehow is in a car park around the back of, by the Taffy, the old Taff station, right? And he is found there very badly injured, head injuries and a broken leg.
He smashed his right leg, fibula and tibula, and his legs. He smashed his head open, beat the hell out of him. You know, I don't know why. But he used a weapon because this is on camera, on NCP car park camera. I don't know if people remember, no doubt remember the old mobile phones weren't little small things like a shell. In them days were more like a recorder, like the size of this, or bigger than this recorder I've got in my hand. And he used the steel case of the mobile phone, which he's probably strategically bought for that purpose, you know, as a sort of a truncheon. And he was beating him like that. And you could see by the cameras in the car park. And Raymond Thomas, his face was literally, looked as though someone had been chopping sticks on it. It was all smashed up to the side. Bones were broken. There was scars, permanent scars. His legs were broken. And of course he could not be a witness in court.
So he was going to be a witness to defend you then?
Yeah.
About this painting?
He was a witness to defend me, to exonerate me.
They arrested Baram and accused him of attacking Ray Thomas. Ray Thomas is out. I went to see him in hospital, hell of a state, right? And that's a very serious offence. You get automatic 7 years, I would think. They claimed to have a film of the attack, which my colleague says impossible. I didn't do it, so you can't have a film of it. 5 times, Mike Williams, our solicitor, attempted to see the film. Now, they put in writing that they've got this film. The director, the prosecutors, right? He finally got to see the film, and when he got to see the film, it shows Ridgway and a large man in uniform, attacking Ray Thomas. Now, hey, hang about. They've put it in writing that it's my colleague. Now, there's something seriously wrong here, isn't there?
I got arrested and charged with Section 22 GBH, which is the highest level of assault there is, next to manslaughter.
So he's obviously got connection with the police in order, or he's gone and persuaded the police that you've done that. Even
exactly.
Though, but they had CCTV camera of it, but showing it wasn't you, and they still arrested you. Is that right?
There's a Mr. Hughes from the Crown Prosecution Service which sent a letter that I was seen on CCTV cameras in the NCP car park, Cardiff, actually assaulting Mr. Raymond Thomas, which is not true. Who was actually on the cameras? Now, this is from Mr. Hughes of the Crown Prosecution Service. Who actually assaulted Ray Thomas on the cameras is Leonard Francis Green and another man.
So what was the CPS saying? They were saying it was
trying to incriminate me,
and is that
which
in
is
writing?
a criminal offence. I've got it in writing, yes, I have absolutely got that in writing.
Right.
So
yeah,
they now try and drop the case against my colleague from the, it's got to go before the stipendiary magistrate, Sir Lincoln Hallam, who was no fool and a tough guy.
Right.
And the prosecution came up and went to the Lincoln Halligan and said, listen, we wish to drop the charge from Section 22 to common assault.
They sent along some solicitor, one of these guys that hangs around the court looking for a bit of business. The public prosecutor didn't turn up.
Right.
So Hanlon says, hey, wait a minute, you want to drop this from the most serious charge in the calendar for attacks and assaults
against Baram,
to the most minor. He said a punch on the jaw in a bar. He said, what is this all about? Of course, the guy couldn't tell him.
Right.
And his uproar.
And Lincoln Halligan looked perplexed. He said, what is this? It's some sort of pantomime or whatever. And finally, he was bewildered and I was bewildered because Ray Thomas actually turned up and he was going to say, I'm not the one who assaulted him. It was Leonard Francis Green. But they finished up, for some reason, protecting Leonard Francis Green at all costs. And they finished up saying, well, we're going to charge you with common assault, which means £50 fine.
And you accepted that?
Well, I don't know what happened. I was just young and very naive at
Right.
the time. Well, relatively young and naive at the time.
Yeah, fair enough.
And finished up there, it went off like a damp squib. The £50 fine was squashed,
Right.
crumpled up into a ball, thrown in the bin, and it just evaporated.
Right, right. So nothing happened to Ridgway after this? He wasn't prosecuted for anything, for perjury,
prosecuted for perjury.
or anything?
No.
But the point is, we got bad publicity, and it caused Alan a lot of distress without compensation.
Let's just stay on Ridgway for a second. So he's trying to set you up for these paintings. He's obviously had someone he's going to sell them to. The thing gets in the newspaper about which blackens your name. So what's Ridgway's real motivation here? Was he just trying to make a few quid out of some paintings, or because you suspect he's a low-level spook?
Well, we think he's a low-level spook. Yes.
Right.
The other thing is that, if I can get this right, while we're waiting for this trial, we were warned never to go near him, and if we touched him or went near him, and all, the court's telling us all this. You see.
So you think he's some kind of operative?
I know he's an operative. He was an operative.
One night we're coming back to our house about 8 in the evening, and his car's outside the house. So we immediately got the phone booth and phoned the police and said, look, you better send someone, because we're not supposed to touch this guy. Right? And the sergeant and the constable came along and they saw the car. So they phoned somebody, and a detective comes along. What are we going to do? And we heard, oh, he's our witness. So they refused to arrest him. He's inside our house. He drove off with 1,500 quid's worth of our gear, aided by the cops.
Right. Now,
it's that bad down there.
Now, this could link into something which has happened recently, because Baram alleges that Ridgway once showed him an incendiary device.
Yes, he did. Well, he did. He showed me.
And what? And he let it off?
No, well, I didn't see him let it off. No, but he did show me they had them.
Right. So this was in what? This was in
early
90s.
His father worked for MI5, but as a technician.
Right.
And he frequently alluded to the fact his father made explosive and other devices.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you about that. He also claimed that a building in Bournemouth was burned down with such a device.
Right.
And he had photographs of it before and after, and him sitting inside it. And
and he was also involved in insurance claims as well.
Yeah, well, when we were in Hove, we were walking down the street one day, and a car drove up, beep, 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 and it's him in Ridgeway. Well, I wasn't too fussy on talking with him, but I've always taken the view of find out what you can, you know. Use this and not that, you know. And so he invited us for a drink, so we went in to have a drink with him. It's a sunny afternoon, and he then said, I'm working for insurance companies, checking on Brighton hotels. And I thought, it's a bit odd. And he said, oh, the Palace Royal, I think it is. I read it. The big hotel, the first one ever built there, right on Brighton Pier, built in the time of the Prince Regent, right? Well, the trouble with the place is